Hey guys, good morning. I pray everything's well with you. Um, Shout out to my brothers and sisters um, of both the scripture and in the interest of blackness. Last night, somebody asked me a question about the definition of externalities. I do apologize because I didn't get a chance to explain that. I was having camera difficulties and actually it took a long time to get it done. All right. Um, so the definition of externalities before I talk about anything else is easy to understand, but it's long-winded. So give me a couple seconds, okay? Um, and I apologize for the mess. I'm very junky. I got a lot of stuff in my brain at once, and I'm always trying to do something to just enjoy. My excuse, and I'm sticking with it. All right. So, externalities. Okay. Predominantly, in any uh, era or civilization, uh, it was necessary for certain things to happen for the people to be one community. Let's go a little bit further past that, all right? Or early, ahead of that, okay? Originally, the first people were both nomadic and they were farmers, okay? So let's say the first group of people on this earth were a family, so to speak, okay? As a result of them being a family, they would do everything together. You know, they lived in one communal area. All right. So what happened was that this family would basically grow their own food together. They would hunt together. They would farm together. Okay. So they made their own huts, their own houses. Waste. They were able to control their waste. And yada yada yada, transportation, that kind of thing. Okay, so say you have this one place, okay, and you, what would you do? Well, first you would clear the grounds, okay. You would build a method of preventing wild animals from getting into your little dwelling because it's for you and your children, your family, okay? You would build your place within that dwelling and you'd make sure that you had an area for your tools, well, yada, 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 okay? Then when your child gets older, your children get older, depending on what your view is, they're married, they have children, then what ends up happening is you have to build more, okay? It's obvious that when you're within the bounds of your father's land, and I say father for a reason. I know that there's some people that beg to differ, but the whole thesis behind husband and wife is oneness and being one spirit, and there is an overall end all authority in that group, whether you like it or not. Regardless of how intelligent she is and everything else of that nature, because he does need to be wise and know when he's dealing with a genius. But there is a final say in certain things, so keep that in mind. Um, but when you're within your father's land that he built, that he raised up, he erected, and you don't like what he's saying or doing, you have the right to leave. Now, if you leave, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have to find your own land, your own dwelling, and forage for yourself, okay? This creates the nomadic person, the one who seeks for his own, okay? And every single time these people do this, they create their own dwellings in their own regions and their own areas. So now I want to come back home to my father's land, I need to make sure that that's clear. The reason why is because I could be bringing stuff to my father to show him how I'm doing, or I could be getting stuff from my father's land, or from my brothers, or the descendants of my brothers and sisters. So this is the beginning of trade and civilization, which is cool in a sense. The thing to think about also is that um, we're we were all doing the same exact thing to try to keep the stress and strain down and to try to have skill for trade. We started doing things like individualizing skill sets. Okay, so in some areas, I should say, okay, because there's some nations that are a little bit different than others. I mean, in Egypt, they had people to build. They had people who specialized in growing. They had people specialized in animal husbandry. In Israel, there was a responsibility to grow your own food, to have your own animals, because you had to sacrifice to Yahuwah, and that's called tithing. If you don't know that, then there's something that you could research or you could ask me. But tithing essentially requires you to have land to grow. And then you still have other areas like the Grecians that came way later. Macedonians, probably a little bit easier to explain, Mesopotamians, who were sacrificing to multiple gods and might not necessarily be correct. I'm sorry, my computer's going off the hinge right now. But the ultimate thesis behind this was that they were trying to streamline things for the betterment of themselves. Keep in mind that each civilization that tried to streamline eventually fell down and collapsed at a point because of the fact that sustaining that many people at once was not feasible to the group overall. So if you go to our civilization, you fast forward. What you got is you had all these farmers and things like that, and there was rules and regulations that did not exist yet for education. So unless you were rich or aristocrat, you could not learn anything. And through learning things, you got more ability to be able to produce in the United States of America. That's the truth. The issue at hand is now that you have the business boom and the skill boom. Number one, you need to have roads to go to and from, just like you would have if you were in Egypt or if you were in Europe, or you were in Greece, or you were in Rome, in the Indus Valley. You needed roads, okay? In order to have roads, they created taxation, okay? In order to live in a certain area, they created taxation. In order to provide services to people so that you could survive, they created taxation. And so everything was getting taxed because the king needed money for hiring soldiers to protect the lands, and for building the walls, and so that he can do the Scrooge McDuck thing and lay down in the gold and make his little gold angels. I'm just joking, but I mean, typically that's what they did, you know. They just gathered up money. What that would encourage the people to do in the past civilizations was either to move or to go out of network to go trade, because they needed to procure wealth and riches for their land. That's why a lot of times today, the world talks about trade acts and things of that nature. The problem with that is dependence, and Rome is one of those examples of what it's like to be too dependent on external resources. Greece is like that too. Um, Beware of dependence on external resources and allowing people like China to go into your land and purchase mass product, or rather to rent your land, to destroy it, deface it, and take lots of resources off your land. But trying to keep on track here, I do apologize. I go off on a lot of tangents. In order for a big visionary, so to speak, to be able to provide his services at a mass rate upon his vision, he needs land, and he needs resources, and he needs a way to get to his land. That's going back to this civilization, okay? So what big business does now is that big business buys a land, and they need electricity to come in from the outside. They need water to come in from the outside. They need sewage to leave the area. They need roads for people to travel. They need gas, those kind of things, resources, okay? They need to be able to take their produce production, their materials, their surplus from one area to the next area. And they also need to bring something back to continue their business, all right? What happens is when everybody's farming or there's too much farming at those time periods, farmers are going out of business and they needed work, especially during the world wars. Women needed to get work, okay? Factories started losing people. So if you think about the factory aspect of everything, a person would have to come from point A to point B, okay? If you keep traveling on those roads, it takes a lot of gas money. That's an external reason or external situation to having to have a job. It's transport, okay? So now you're paying to get to your job to get the money to work with, okay? Now, the thing is this. In order for you to work for somebody else, you may need to move closer, okay? You may need a house in that area. You may need a school in that area. You may need a hospital in that area. You may need a place to purchase food in that area, unless you grow it and you're going to do all that right after you come out from work at 6 o'clock at night. You're going to need these things. Now, we go back to that. These external situations and external things that big business doesn't want to be responsible for, when tax time comes around, that pot, 1 takes out, 2 takes out, 3 takes out, 4 takes out, 5 takes out, 6 takes out, 7 takes out, okay? 8 and 9 do not take out. They don't feel they should, because they need to deal with growing their business, and their thought process is, if I take out, I'm not going to be able to hire my workers. I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. So there stays in the pot. Now, this debt, there's interest on the debt because more debt comes next year. So everybody's taken out except for big business. Okay? They refuse to pay for the external factors that they created in order to run their company. That's called externalities. That's the debt, and that's the deficit that happens in the United States of America. The extenuating reasons why we can't get out of situations in the United States of America. And the ideal thought in the United States of America is, if you vote Democrat, then they take care of the little people. And if you vote Republican, you're voting for the person that takes care of the big business, when in fact the Republicans think to themselves that they're trying to do this country a favor for the procurement of wealth for this society. The aristocrats. The truth is, neither one of them are good. They're both parts of the same coin. And we need a better solution. So, people are very faithful in voting, and the percentage of things going changing versus the things going down in the United States of America is night and day. So the question then becomes, is there a replacement for voting? There's no real necessarily replacement for voting, but there are things you can do in place of voting, because voting is mostly a popularity thing, and most people who vote are dependent on what the people are gonna do. And when they don't, they say they failed them. I should have never voted for them. Blah 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 blah. Before this whole thesis of voting, this aristocracy came to pass, people had to work with each other to get things done. Remember, we used to trade with one another. We used to grow our own. We used to do our own. We used to deal with skill sets. In order for a person to deal with metal back then, they needed to have their own things to deal with metal. In order to shape metal, it's called metallurgy, blacksmithing, things of that nature. These people now became artisans of metal, and part of the reasons why we don't know what to do with metal is because today we only learn different things about metal. We only learn different things about light. We only learn different things about plastics or water and things like that nature, and we don't know the totality of our skill sets. You have to understand that most of the artists back then were scientists, and the reason why they were able to do such great things was because of their ability to perceive and express. Their minds were wide open to the whole entire path of the world in some shape or form, especially if they believed in the higher power. You have to believe that a being that believes that there's something greater than them is going to try to fathom things more than a being that does not believe so, because in the end of all things, they're going to focus on theory. The other person is going to experiment, fail, and learn all other things in a process, because they're trying to go big or go hard or die trying. So you have all these skills and these abilities and things of that nature, and then you forfeit them to be a part of society, and that's what kills you. For blacks and believers, to me, this is a big problem, because if you're a believer, if you're part of Biblical Ninjas and we talk about the Bible all the time, then there's no reason for you to think that your purpose in the United States of America is to be part of opposing world. That's just it. The two things you should be focusing on is exactly what the people of the book focused on, and that's setting your alliances, having your trades, and being honorable in this world, as well as the gospel of the book. If you are black, going through all these situations in this world, and you went through slavery and the mass murders, the killings, the loss of your title, lack of tribal information, then that's a problem too. You see how I feel about this is that when Harriet Tubman created the Underground Railroad, which I might add was also in part to Caucasian people, because we needed places to sleep, places to be hidden, and most black people didn't have homes. So unless we were in some dank pool of festering water, or being dealt with harshly by mosquitoes, Caucasians were hiding us underground, or hiding us in stalls, or hiding us in barns, or hiding us in the woods and feeding us and giving us some nutrition. And Harriet Tubman was not anybody to play with. She would, you probably would die if you did not do as she said. And this is all to get them from the South to the North, you know. And I had a wonderful conversation with a believing brother, and we talked. And it's a responsibility of any believer or any black person to invest in one's people, invest in one's self, invest in one's household. I keep saying it all the time. People run their mouth all day long about Yahoo Dim, but they get stuff done. You know, they're supposed to get stuff done. And Bible people look bad because in the end of the day, whether you believe in the gospel or the law, you still have a list of responsibilities that you have not made. And what you fail to understand, whether black or believer, is that you are only as weak as the weakest link in your nation. Your ability to unify and be strong is what people fear. Whether it be by your homeless, by your sick, by your elderly, by your orphans, by your widows. People watch that. You know, historically, people would go into other kingdoms under the name of spy. And they will watch. They will look around, you know. They will see how many homeless you got. They will see how many sick you got. They would see what your village lacked. And then they would give a report. They would check how so many soldiers you have, blah, 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 blah. You watch several movies and you do a little bit of research, you would see that sometimes, in order to look more menacing, people who could not hold a sword were given a sword so that they can look like they were tougher than they really were. And that's what you're going to have to do in order to survive in this world, is create your own underground railroad where your brothers and your sisters in the United States of America and abroad can have without fail. You should not be hearing about all these killings of kids and organs removed from kids, because that should not be a factor in a kingdom. You know, in a black nation, you should not have such losses like that. There should not be any killings of your brothers and sisters. You should not even be watching killings of your brothers and sisters. But let's take that to a realistic level. Your brothers and sisters should not be on the street with all that vulgarity, and people think that this is an issue of freedom, but you don't understand what freedom is, you know. All that freedom you got from after being a slave, to be sitting down, drinking, and getting drunk, and partying all the time, because that's historically what we did. I don't care what any person wants to run their mouth and say. Most of us, when we got out, we did not know what to do, and all we would do is play. Those of us who finally started doing were killed. That's his story. That is our story. You know, it's one of the reasons why most kids don't have fathers in their households, because after being treated bad by the slave owner, the man would rather leave than be with his children. He had no choice. Some people in a scientific plane believe in some shape or form that after a while that certain things happen over and over and over again. It gets ingrained in your DNA, and you don't know why you do it. You just do it. But the fact remains that if a man stands up for his people and does what he needs to do to get things done, then there is a slow, gradual change. And at some point, that change spikes to where his people will have accrued change or vested change, regardless of what he does after that. It's an uphill battle that ends at some point. We'll have a positive flow of positive peak for change. Um, Again, you got to deal with your issues, your elder care, you're homeless, you're sick, you're handicapable, you're widows. Um, your foster care facilities need to go away, and in the black community, we need our own lawyers. We need lobbyists to deal with the factors of the black community, just like the Jews, just like the Buddhists, just like the Hindus, just like the Native Americans, just like the Chinese Americans, just like the Filipinos that come in here for free and get just about everything and anything they want from the United States of America because of what's going on in the nation. Just like the fact that the United States wrote a law like maybe a year or two ago that says that if you're homosexual and you are in a land that is against homosexuality, come here and you will receive amnesty. Okay? Um, when a person from a foreign land is pregnant and they come to the United States of America, they don't have to pay a dime if they have the baby here. It's on the buck of the United States of America. Okay? Meanwhile, in reality, you got like $30,000 to $75,000 worth of debt, depending on what's going on, depending on you're going through during your pregnancy, and things like that really kind of hurt me, especially for believers. I was in a group where this guy's wife was pregnant, and she was having a bad pregnancy, and this really broke my heart. Let me do the math on this so I can tell you what I feel about this, and you can see what I'm saying if I can get this thing to work. Because for some reason it's been acting slow. Anyway, I think it was 2,000 people. His wife was ill. They wanted her to be in the hospital immediately. All he did was say, "Pray for me." He didn't ask for anything. So let me just say that. It was about roughly $20,000 for his wife to be able, no, $40,000 or 30. I think it was $30,000. Okay. It was roughly $30,000 to have her in the hospital and be able to take care of his wife while she was pregnant so she would not lose the baby. And this is in the Bible group. I'm not going to say the name of it because actually I had an issue with somebody in the group at that point due to, in part, to this thing, and I was kicked out because I blocked the person. So I'm not going to say the name of the group, but the fact of the matter is that that man needed about $30,000, and I was thinking there's 2,000 people or more in this group. If we gave $20 each, that would be roughly $40,000. And then he would still have money left over to get what he needs for the baby and to pay for any medication and things that he needed while she was in the hospital. I came up with the idea. I couldn't find the guy. And to this day, I'm worried. I want to know if his baby is alive, if his wife's okay, and things of that nature. And that really, really, really hurt right here. Because this happens every single day in the black community. Meanwhile, in the Israeli community, every single time a woman is pregnant, the people take collection up, and that baby is born debtless. Meanwhile, in most communities that come here foreign, they got 10 to 15 years tax free. Right now in New York, they got maybe 10 to 15 years tax free for businesses to go in New York. Excuse me. One of the things that we have to understand is that we are our own village. and they are not for us, because every single time they make choices for other people not to pay, we got to be responsible for that. Anyway, the criteria is two different things, two different groups. Blacks only, believers only. Okay. I'm gonna do $100. I'm going 100 people. Sorry, I keep saying that. 1,000 people, 5,000 people. Okay, at about $80. Okay, that's $96,000. $96,000 in a year at $80 a month for 100 people. $960,000 a month for $960,000 a year for 1,000 people, and $4.4 million with 5,000 people. Now, it takes like maybe 30,000 to roughly 75,000 to run a fast food restaurant. The next thing that comes to mind is that with fast food, you would roughly be making anywhere between $1 to $3 million. So let's say $3 million. I'm being greedy here. In 12 months' time. Three, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, divided by 12. So that's $250,000 a month. Okay. Let's say in 4 weeks, divided by 4. That's $62,500 in 4 weeks. Let's see if we were just doing it in 5 days. Not 7, I said 5. That's $12,500 in 5 days. Let's see if it was 12 hours for your business. That's $2,500 in an hour. The average purchase a person makes in a fast food restaurant, let's say $10. Okay, that's 500 people. Okay, in an hour. All right. We know that's doable because people have tickers. But even if that was just $1 million, then we